uh, the two prospects that are most notable from this draft.
Oh, I would love to. We got two big prospects. Shout out to Chris Saunders, actually, for he is very great with evaluating talent. And Tristan Casas, our first round pick, 26th overall from Florida, high school in Florida. He's a third baseman, but can also go to first base. The kid just straight up mashes. He has a 500-foot home run on his resume. And Chris pointed out very, very quickly that this kid's going to be in the big leagues within 4 or 5 years. He's a legit talent. And after looking him up and reading up on him, he's great. His attitude is amazing. Some people may not like it. We can get to that. His attitude's awesome. And
I
that for us in the next 4 or 5 years when guys are going out, like Devers may be leaving, Bogarts may be leaving because of contracts and money. This kid can step up in the junior league play.
The worst case here is he's Will Middlebrooks with Bryce Harper's attitude.
Yeah, and I love Will Middlebrooks, and I miss him to this day. And I miss JL too because they ran her out of town. She was a great sideline reporter. But Tristan Casas, that's the hitter. And our third-round pick, 100th overall, great name on this kid, Durbin Feltman. He's a relief pitcher. He's a closer at TCU. He's the all-time TCU saves leader. He's got a very fast fastball. That makes sense. He throws the fastball really hard, 95 up to 98, and he's got a great slider with a lot of movement. Comes out of the same arm slot, so the batter, they can't pick it up until it's already in front of them, for anybody that struggles with that terminology. And he is old enough to know he's not a freshman. He's old enough to know that he can come in here. He wants to come and pitch. He could be here this summer. Brendan Finnegan, Terry looked it up for me. Brendan Finnegan came out and pitched for the Royals as a rookie in the World Series during their World Series run. He also was from TCU. So these guys are getting bred down there in Texas, and they're ready for the big-time show. And if we make it to the 40-man roster this year and we're doing well in the playoffs, you might see him come up beforehand.
Time will tell, but, given our bullpen situation, which I tend not to be as pessimistic as most people, but, we always need to have, other guys on our radars, whether it's internally or externally from the organization. So it'll be interesting to see if Feltman can come up and be a force, so soon. Getting back to Casas, the third base prospect, made a little bit of a media sensation out of himself by kind of fat shaming Pablo Sandoval, which not a good look. How did you feel about it, Chris?
I mean, to be honest with you, I'm all fun for, laughing in games and whatnot, but I have a hard time being able to, just laugh off when a guy who just gets drafted, I understand, first round, respect, I get it, but you haven't even stepped on a major league mound, you don't have any dirt on your cleats, and you're going to attack a guy who has won multiple World Series rings, hit 3 home runs in a game, which mind you, has only been done by, I think, 2 or 3 guys, one of them being, I think it's Lou Gehrig or Mickey Mantle, one of them. So this kid Casas doesn't have any sort of cachet. His name is not connected to any of those guys. So, and I get why everyone wants to attack Pablo Sandoval because he's the guy to get attacked on. But if you're going to attack somebody, here's an idea. Worry about yourself, get to the show, put up numbers, and then we can revisit this. But for a kid to be able to attack a guy who, I get the weight problem's been bad for him, but he has multiple World Series rings. How many rings does this kid have? He can't talk. Plain and simple.
Yeah, and those 3 home runs were off of Justin Verlander, not far removed from his Cy Young year, and Sandoval was a World Series MVP. So chances are this kid isn't going to experience that, on his own. So, hopefully that could go 2 different ways. I hope we're not, I hope he's not going to have the attitude of a Harper or a David Price or someone that's particularly polarizing. But on the flip side of the coin, a little bit of confidence can go a long way, especially in a market like Boston. So,
yeah, I think in the market, I think it's good for baseball. I think it's good for a young player. I think that the way it came up I think it was perfect. I like that when they asked him, hey, where do you see yourself in the lineup? He was like, in the lineup. I think it's sarcastic, funny. I think with all the media and how hard the media is on the players, I like when the players give it back a little bit. It's like giving it back to the refs or the umps in sports. You got to do that. You got to have that gamesmanship. And excuse me, sorry. And as for the call on with Sandoval, I think it was more or less just like, they asked, how are you going to fit into it? He's like, I got to watch my weight over there. They had that guy, Pablo Sandoval, and it didn't work out well. And, it's true in that aspect that he was a World Series champion 3 times. He was so great. But, it's more of like, what can you do for me now than what did you do for me later, before? And he did nothing in Boston. And the weight was a big issue. His attitude was a big issue. And I just like that he kind of brought it up kind of nonchalantly, pretty quick, moved it along. I know what you're saying, though, Chris. You can't talk about that as respectful for the game, but I didn't view it as he was attacking him like as a player. I think it's about how his time here and how it ended is how he just kind of was like, I got to avoid that aspect and stay true and watch my weight and just really play hard.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it could be a lesson to him how quickly things tend to go viral. Especially within our market. That made MLB Central, High Heat's good job, bad job with Chris Russo, and of course he wasn't thrilled with it. And obviously he hates the Red Sox anyway, so it's probably not hard to make the bad job segment on that show, but it definitely did. So. So we'll see how it turns out, but I think Feltman will be the immediate story, hopefully anyway, as far as how quickly he can make an impact. So
yeah, we'll see Feltman before we see Casas.
Yeah, for sure, and hopefully he'll slot in. Casas will slot in more at third because I think we're all first. Or I guess it doesn't matter. The point I was getting at is hopefully Devers still factors in somehow.
Because nice defensively. I don't know if you saw it.
You talking about tonight?
Yeah, he made a nice diving play over there.
Yeah, it's kind of his bat that I'm a little more concerned about right now. We don't know where the floor is on him yet. I mean, he's still trending downward. I don't think he's hit the floor. So,
he's still going down. He's not yet. He's still struggling.
Yeah, too low below the Mendoza line anyway with his average, and I think his OBP is right around 280. So, which is extremely concerning.
Yeah, not great.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there as well. Let's just, before we transition over to the Yankees, Dave, what did you think of Swihart tonight? Like, did he throw a wrinkle into the catching outlook, or do you think it's just more or less a spot start and they're just going to keep moving him around?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think definitely a spot start and familiarity with Beeks. He caught him once before. It didn't work out well, so maybe that's a Swihart issue as well as a Jalen issue. But I really like Swihart. He hits the ball hard. He barrels the ball. He doesn't give cheap outs. He's a good hitter, and he's a jack of all trades. He can play every position almost, it feels like. I think he did throw a little bit of a wrench into it. I think Vasquez threw a wrench into it yesterday by going off, hitting, triples shy of the cycle, and that double was almost a home run as well. So if Vasquez can show, a swing like that, he's back in. But I think if Vasquez continues to struggle like he did the first, 20% of the season, that you could easily see Swihart in there more often than not, getting some more spot starts at the bottom of the lineup with a Wright and with certain guys like that because, he could show a different value. and he can hit the ball. And if he gets his at-bats, he will get on base. He gets a lot of loud outs, and, the casual baseball fan doesn't really take attest to that. But I know you guys, both of you, definitely notice if you just smoke the ball to somebody, it's not really their fault, and those eventually will start falling. And when they do, that's when good things start happening.
And with Vasquez, I think his uptick lately is kind of like his response to the chirps in the background for people, much like myself, really wanting Sandy Leone in the, catching, an extra start or two per week. And now, so maybe he's kind of upping his game as a response to that, which, isn't a bad thing,
I'm happy it's going that way, not the other way.
Yeah, right. So not a bad problem to have, and I can't see Swihart being a long-term guy at this point. I still think they're just trying to, they're trying to elevate his trade value to get something significant in return. Probably a prospect at this point, but it's. I guess, that'll just kind of bear watching. But he did have didn't he drive in a run tonight, the first one? Or no?
I actually forgot, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I think he hit a double, and I think he brought in a run. I could be mistaken, but his plate appearances are improving as well. So, if nothing else,
he didn't get an RBI tonight, but he was.
Oh, okay.
1 triple walk, so no strikeouts. So
yeah. Oh yeah, he drew a 4-pitch walk, if I remember right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there, but I love the way the rotation responds to Sandy. So I mean, he's
I love Sandy out there.
Yeah, he's my guy. He has to pitch. He has to catch Sale and Porcello at an absolute minimum, and I'd kind of like him to catch Erod as well to kind of keep him. We're 11-1 with Erod, and he's 7-1 on the season. So I mean, it just seems like it's almost an automatic win every time he takes the mound.
Yeah, I think Sandy can't hit the baseball, but he calls a great game, so whatever.
Right, exactly. So Chris, what's going on with the Yankees? You guys are kind of having some rotation woes, if I'm not mistaken.
Besides the Montgomery problem, Domingo Germán's had over a 5 ERA since his 6th inning, almost perfecto, if you want to call it that, against Baltimore in his first major league start after Houston. But, CeCe's bad. If you want to take what they did in Toronto, and you can make a case, Detroit too. I know Severino was classic Severino. I saw a stat right after his start that if you want to date back to last year, 25 out of 27 starts, he's given up 1 run or less. That's freaking ridiculous.
That is freaking ridiculous.
Field this year. He is.
He's been. No, I agree with you. He's been a Cy Young candidate. I think he should be in the top 3, and if he's not, then these writers are freaking hypocrites because he's been nothing but lights out, and even on his bad games, he gives up like 3 runs. Oh, whoop-de-doo. That's so bad, but CeCe had a good start against Toronto. I know that Sonny Gray had a good outing last night. I know they went to extras, but the one thing I worry about with Sonny Gray is that he shows spurts like he did against Toronto where he has lights out stuff, and then he'll go up against Oakland or he'll go up against Kansas City and throw up a 7 spot and not pitch past the 4th. So it's like, what guy are we getting? Just like with Erod, which you dealt with for numerous years. Which guy are we going to get?
Erod now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Gray has a history of health issues as well, so
he's been healthy this year. It's not. Yeah. It hasn't been the health. It's just been. Actually, if you really want to get technical, with him, it's just throwing strikes. If he doesn't throw strikes, he doesn't have enough disparity with his changeup and his curveball, or rather his fastball and his changeup, to really get a lot of swings and misses like early contact. So he relies on that 2-seamer to be able to dive in at the bottom of the zone and then drop that hook because he expects that to be the changing of the eye level.
Right. Yeah, it's just consistency with him, and his ERA